Hello, my name is Claudia and I'm going to be your host today. There are also moderators with me, Zuza, Head of Marketing, and Ania, Head of People and Culture. And of course, our talented speakers, Marcin Wadoń, Senior Full Stack Developer, Kuba Jarzyński, Software Architect, and Krzysiek Antecki, Senior Frontend Developer. This is our first Evojam webinar for short. We're a Polish software company, and one thing that you should know about us is that we like learning. And that's why our motto is keep growing, as you can see it on the screen. And you can't grow if you don't try new things, right? So not only do we like to learn, we also enjoy sharing our knowledge. For example, we're active blog writers, but as I said, we wanted to try something new. And that's how the idea of this webinar came up. There are many companies to choose from right now on the market, and we know how difficult it may be to make the right decision, especially if you're at the beginning of your career. So to make it easier for you, we'd like to tell you more about how we work at a small software company. Because who knows, maybe a small software company is also a good place for you. We're quite small, in fact. There's only 36 of us at Evojam. Moreover, the speakers will share with you tips and tricks on how to grow professionally as a developer and what kind of work environment is beneficial for you. We'd love to talk to you, so if you have any questions to our speakers, just write them in the chat. Some of them will be answered on the spot, and some of them will be answered after the presentation. I see that a few more people have joined, so please say hi on the chat. And let's begin. So please welcome our first speaker, Marcin, who will share with you how to prepare for the recruitment process.
I started as a front-end developer, participated in many projects. Then about 2 years ago, I changed my position and moved to backend, where I'm working with Scala and JVM. I love functional programming and the theory behind it, the category theory. And over these years, I've been participating in many recruitment meetings. And today I would like to share with you my experience. Well, with that experience also comes the knowledge of how much I don't know yet. You are at the beginning of the IT journey, and I think you would like to find a dream job. How to do that? How to present something if you have no commercial experience? Actually, that's a question to you. How many of you are newcomers? Where are you on your career path? Do you have the IT experience or you just want to start? You can write answers on the chat. I would love to see them. You've been searching for some jobs, applied, and what to do next? You are getting ready to go through the recruitment process, but you need to know what exactly you are dealing with. And at small software companies, the recruitment process is usually divided into stages. First of all, we are waiting for your application. Either a CV or your LinkedIn profile. Most of you are at the beginning of your IT journey, I believe. So you may ask, what can I show? Well, tell us a few words about yourself, your expectations, what you are looking for. And having no commercial experience, you still can show what you already did. Some pet projects or trials and errors. Then, during the phone call, you'll have the possibility to ask anything. Projects, technologies, team, work culture. And if you are at the beginning of your career, we may ask you to do a homework. Most likely a small application to create from scratch or something like that. We'd like to see how you work, what you already know, what's your style. Then you have an opportunity to meet the team. During 2 conversations, you will meet our HR team and then also the technical recruiters. And last but not least, we always want to give you feedback regardless of the final decision. Evojam is a company that value employees and value their well-being. The friendly atmosphere is a priority. Since the very beginning, since the phone call, would like you to feel relaxed, not stressed. You should consider all the meetings as conversations, discussions, rather than polling. We would like to avoid, asking you only. And when we are at the recruitment meeting, joining as recruiters, we often start with a warm-up question that then we can discuss. And the warm-up question may be related to your experience or recently gained knowledge. And now it's not only about the IT and the technology. We really appreciate your willingness to learn. So the answer like, you are learning a new language, or you try to write a book, well, all answers are good. And this basically makes an excellent ground for the discussion. Hard skills. It's not everything, and I will tell you why in a second. They are gained through repetition, they are gained through experience, so it takes time. As recruiters, we have all spectrum of candidates, and the best recruitment meetings I had were discussions. And I usually ask the same question to the senior candidate as well as the junior one, but the difference is that I expect a different answer. With seniority, you should learn and be able to talk about more detailed stuff, while at the beginning, we might help you to go through the topic, we may point you some direction to go. And at EvoJam, we've come up with a set of questions to ask for each specialty. They're related to the language features, code design, performance, testing techniques, architecture, communication between services, and code review. And the code review and the code quality, maybe it's not 100% a hard skill, but we believe that the code review is crucial. It's more than just a bug check. It creates kind of consistency, ensure the quality, but most importantly, it allows you to learn. It allows you to make mistakes and fix them. I said that hard skills are not everything, and this is why. Soft skills are equally important or even more. So what are the soft skills? They are personal attributes that influence how well you can work or interact with others. These skills make it easier to create trust, lead teams, and form relationships. In essence, they are crucial for your success in the workplace and also your personal life. If you run a business, they can help you find, attract, and retain clients. To run a project smoothly, you need to learn how to delegate the work, how to work efficiently in a team, learn communication abilities, be able to adapt to new environments. I said that I started as a front-end developer. At some point, I realized I want to start doing something else. That's the adaptability skill, I'd say. Okay, some questions. Wait, what? Why a recruiter could tell you some questions up front? Well, it's not a mystery, and what we look for is your experience. So it's not easy to prepare an answer for these questions because there is no single correct answer. The example answers we ask on interviews are following. What's the most challenging code you have written lately? This question is perfect for the beginning. It allows you to express yourself, to talk about experience, something that you are proud of. That's what I mean, that this is a great ground for future discussion. Recruiter, for example, can fluently switch to technologies that you used. What makes code automatically untestable? That's another book-sized topic. You can choose multiple directions about the code quality, about the architecture, common mistakes. Maybe you would say something about mocks or tests. How to represent asynchronous computations? I believe that's a valid question, no matter which language we will be talking about. Well, each one has some ways to describe the API calls, async loops, or maybe just offloading the work to another process or thread. What's the difference between A and B, between this and that feature? That's really often a question showing an ability to compare something and justify that. Many times the client would ask you, what should I choose? Which technology would be the best for that kind of project? Last but not least, how to securely structure a VPC network with multiple EC2 instances, Lambda functions, to provide reasonable security and convenient SSH access. And this question comes from the DevOps interview, but as you see, not every question is super simple, but as I said, will not require a perfect solution from a junior candidate. to do or not to do. The biggest mistakes you can do is cheating. Cheating about your experience, technologies you know. I believe no one wants to work with such people. There is a trend to put as many fancy words as I heard about to the resume. There was a funny keynote presentation on which the presenter referred to this as follows. I typically ask recruiters to point out which of these are Pokemon. We as recruiters take a look at the CV and prepare for the interview to ask questions about technologies you work with. From time to time, we hear from candidates that well, this tool was used in the project, someone else configured that, and I was just running it. I don't know how it works. Okay, next one. The most common reasons why candidates lack or are perceived as to lack enthusiasm is like they're tired, stressed, unprepared, or overconfident. It shows like they are not smiling, there is no eye contact at all, leaning back in the chair, or with flat speaking voice. And the message for the recruiter is, I don't want this job. And lack of enthusiasm is also about not asking questions at all. Don't you want to know the team you will be working with, the company, projects, team culture, especially in the interview with technical people? They're working day to day with the code. Who should you ask if not them? By the way, to be honest with you, there was one interview I keep in my mind. That was for the position of DevOps, and I'm not a DevOps. Actually, we're looking for a contractor, and the very first message on that interview was that we are not experts, but the candidate is, so please convince us that you know the matter. And at that particular interview, there were two people, a candidate and his boss. That was really unusual interview because the candidate answered most of the strictly technical questions, but every other one was answered by his boss, like a babysitter. Okay, and the most important yet the hardest thing is to give feedback. This is the last but not least stage of the recruitment process. It allows you to advance, to do better next time. And our motto is keep growing. And I believe that the opportunity to analyze the interview and find ways to improve is priceless. Remember that being rejected doesn't mean a defeat. You should get to know what was great, what should be improved, and by doing so, a failure turns into the opportunity of nailing the next interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for your presentation, for sharing these tips. If you have any question to Martin regarding the presentation or regarding the work at Evojam, feel free to ask us in the Q&A form. And now let's welcome Kuba Jarzyński, who will talk about the biggest mistake he made at Evojam and what he learned from that.
Hi, hello everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Claudia and Martin, for some interesting insights into our recruitment process. My name's Jakub Jarzyński, also known as Kuba Jarzyński, and at the moment I work as a software architect in Evojam. Before that, I was a senior backend developer, and it took me a bit over 2 years to get promoted to the architect's role. I made a number of mistakes along the way, and I want to share one I remember pretty well from my journey to a software architect's role. So yeah, mistakes. As developers, we're pretty good at making mistakes, all kinds of mistakes, and causing errors that sometimes even show up in people's browsers and in the mobile applications that we're working on. And it's really not possible to avoid ever really making any mistakes. It's more a case of how well we're able to handle situations that result from these mistakes. And that applies not only to error messages that you see as the end users, but also smaller and much more mistakes that we make as we develop the systems itself. So we have tools and techniques for catching mistakes as early as possible as we develop. One of such techniques is TDD, which is a shorthand for test-driven development. And the idea here is that we first make a test that fails. So even before we write the code that satisfies the requirement, we write a failing test. So the starting point for us in this scenario is a mistake already, because there's a mistake in our system, and the mistake is that this functionality is not present yet. And then in the next step, what we do is make the test pass by writing the code that provides this functionality. And then another pretty important step in this cycle of TDD is refactoring. And that means making the code more future-proof, improving the structure, and making writing next failing tests easier, and then making them pass even easier. So this is a technique that I personally really like, and I do this a lot as I work on my own code. But this is what you can do as a developer. But what can you do as a team or an organization? So this picture that you might find a little similar, it depicts the lean approach to software development. And it's also a cycle of building something. So first coming up with ideas for features that we want to give to our users. Then we spend some time building these features, but we're also always prepared to make some measurements once we deliver the feature, to know if it's used as we expected, if it makes money for the organization that we work on. And once we have these measurements, we can learn more about the environment in which our system operates. And that leads to even more ideas to build more things, or sometimes even get rid of things that we built but are not as good as we were hoping for. And we continue in the cycle of building, making mistakes, but also sometimes succeeding, and then learning from these mistakes or successes. So what happened to me? What do I remember so well as a big mistake that I made in my journey in Evojam? This picture brings back all the bad memories, to tell you the truth. It all started with the idea to replace the usage of relational database, in that case PostgreSQL, that we knew pretty well as a team, with some bit of documents approach with Elasticsearch. We had this idea because we saw that we were doing a lot of unnecessary work translating between object codes in object-oriented codes in Java to relational models, and then translating it back with pretty much every access. We were writing a lot of boilerplates, pretty boring code for that, even though we were doing this with an ORM technology. It was still an overhead, and we figured it would be much easier and quicker to develop if we switched to a database that lets us store documents, which look a lot more like objects that we have in our code. And we already had one database at hand because we were already using Elasticsearch for log aggregation and viewing logs in Kibana. So yeah, it looked pretty good. We were already a bit familiar with Elasticsearch, and we started developing a new module that we had on the roadmap with Elasticsearch. Everything was looking pretty good in the beginning. Time was passing. I was the one writing most of the code with the new Elasticsearch approach. And I was working with a front-end developer on the team. We were integrating regularly, publishing features one after another for testing, and we were making pretty good progress. I was pretty happy with the decision because I was able to escape some of unnecessary mapping between objects and database relations, until at some point I started seeing issues with persisting changes that were being made through front-end forms. To be exact, it was about how soon the changes that we write to the database are accessible to queries to the database. So once we saved a front-end form, the database was telling us, okay, I have it, everything went well. But if we queried the database immediately after the write, we were still getting the values from before the write. And that's because with Elasticsearch, it's accepting all changes to indexed documents pretty quickly, and telling us that, okay, it will be saved in its own time. And if we want to wait for the write to be completed, we need to set an additional flag with our write. And unfortunately, if we go in this direction, we can end up with writes that take seconds. In case of our form, all the writes that needed to do with this wait for completion flag were taking 8 seconds at maximum at some point, because it was a pretty big form with a lot of sections, and 8 seconds is completely unacceptable for a seemingly simple form to save through a backend application. So when we realized that this is what happens, we saw that Elasticsearch is not exactly the right technology for what we were trying to achieve, and we saw that MongoDB could be a better alternative in this case. Because I was the main developer for this module, I took the whole blame because I was responsible for the decision to use Elasticsearch, and I started migrating the code that I had written over a couple of months to MongoDB. But because it was my mistake, I decided not to tell anyone how long it's going to take for me to migrate to another database. And if you've ever had a chance to do a thing like this, you know that it's not a matter of a day or two, but it can take weeks. So I was also pretty optimistic, more optimistic than I should have been, and I wasn't telling anyone in what kind of trouble I was. I was telling the rest of the team that I'm still working on the tasks that I was supposed to work on. Everything is going according to the schedule, but the pressure was mounting up because it was becoming more and more apparent that I am not making progress, and no one understood why. So I was getting more and more stressed and getting asked more questions and then I was making more and more lies about this. So this was a pretty dark period for me. And that's partly because I saw threats coming toward me from all around. I wasn't really trusting my team. I was telling lies to everyone. And the situation got so bad that I decided that the only way out is to leave Evojam. So I handed in my notice, and that was the end of my adventure in Evojam. Okay, well, that's not exactly what happened. I'm still here, pretty happy with where I am. So there was a point in the story that I just told where things went a little differently. And luckily, it was right at the start when I decided what the mistake is. So when me and the front-end developer realized that this was the situation was getting worse and worse, I immediately spoke to the rest of the team, and they proved to be very supportive. So I spoke to my fellow backend developer on the team, Łukasz, on the picture here, and he agreed that it's not really my fault because no one else in the team saw this coming. We didn't have enough experience to realize where things were heading, and I wasn't the only one to blame for this. I also spoke to the rest of the team, including Krzysiek Antecki, who will be speaking right after me. And he told me that he will make sure that we arrange all other ongoing development around this issue that I will be working to fix, so that things go pretty good with the schedule. And still I am able to fix it and repay this technical debt. I'm seeing some questions coming in. Let me have a quick look. And one of the attendees is asking if, Jakub, did you have a situation in Evojam that you had been forced to tell not whole truth? Well, that's an interesting question. I mostly try to be as open as I am showing now. Maybe sometimes I'm not telling everything to everyone if I'm still able to fix it. If I'm sure that I'll quickly fix it and then tell it and then tell everyone that this thing happened, because if you're able to swing it, it's always nice to come with a solution rather than the problem. But on the other hand, showing the problem and inviting the rest of the team into figuring out a solution is also a great opportunity for you to learn to find your way around a situation like this, as well as for the other people on the team to see how you're able to navigate a problem like this. Yeah, interesting question. Thank you very much. And let's get back to the presentation. Oh yeah, the last person I had to tell was this very serious and important person whose name is Artur, who I was most afraid of. He's our head of delivery, and I had to tell him as well, because I didn't want him to find out about this delay later on. And I also, to tell you the truth, I really wanted to know what he thinks about it. But it's just turned out that he liked the approach to repay this debt that I presented, and he also offered his help if I needed any help with communication around this costly mistake that we made, because this is what happens in software development, and our teams as well as our clients need to know that this is just what software development is like, and we're doing our best to provide the best value that we can. So this picture is more accurate in depicting how I felt in navigating this problematic situation. I wasn't by myself. I had my team around me, and we were using, just like it says here, mistakes as an opportunity for learning, because there's really no better way to get better at something than to make mistakes, draw conclusions, and fix the mistakes that you caused. That's all I prepared. Thank you very much. I see another question that I will answer shortly. I just wanted to say that you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to our page, and in the Join Us section, there's a team testimonials subpage where you can learn more stories from people at Evojam, mostly stories about how they were able to grow as developers, and not only because of the kind of supportive organization that Evojam is. And the question that I see, actually I see a couple of questions. The first one is if we're doing retro meetings regularly. Yeah, we do that in projects a lot. So we have a set structure for retro meetings in projects where we also invite the clients that we work for. So in many projects, we have product owners in our daily meetings as well as in our retro meetings. So because it's good to in a retro meeting like this, it's good to see the perspective of many people involved in the process of us delivering changes. We also invite people working part-time, like UX designers, into these meetings, because we want to gather as many viewpoints on how things are going as possible. And that happens not only in projects. I know that many different initiatives happening inside the company. We also have these kinds of retro meetings. Even after this webinar, I remember that Marek, our CEO, reminded us that we also want to have a retro meeting to exchange our opinions on how the thing went, what can be made better next time. Yeah, I have one more question. What kind of support you offer for juniors? What kind of support? Where to start? All kinds of support. You, as a junior developer, as well as any other kind of developer in Evojam, you will have weekly one-on-one meetings with a mentor. As you join, you will also have a buddy in the project who will take care of any questions you have at the start of your adventure in Evojam. And you cannot really expect for anyone you ask for help not to help you. The only possible answer you can get if you ask literally anyone in Evojam for help is they can answer, they can direct you to someone who knows the topic better. But I'm pretty sure they will still try to follow up and ask you if the person that they directed you to was helpful. And I have another question. Did you hire someone just after studies? Yeah, I worked with one such person. It was not for a junior role. It was for an intern role, and that developer, it was actually a she. So she was very successful. She very soon got promoted from intern to a junior developer, and then became a mid developer. She's even in the picture that I'm showing right now, but I'm not going to point her out. You can take a guess. That's everything I had. Thank you for the questions, and let me hand it over to Claudia.
Thank you, Kuba, for your presentations, and thank you for sharing this story with us. We have one more question. This question is specifically to Marcin.
As I mentioned before, soft skills are equally important as hard skills, or even more. And the reasons why we rejected some candidates were about inability to meet each other. Although we work remotely, would love to meet each other from time to time. Also, lack of willingness to learn. I remember an interview where the candidate said he don't want to learn anything new. Some kind of weird communication or inability to communicate properly, not being able to justify something or everything. We as developers usually work with clients day to day. And also, when we recruit a senior candidate, we especially look for those soft skills like ability to lead the project from the beginning to the end. And well, sometimes a candidate isn't a good fit for that. Yeah. So to sum up, we really care about soft skills, and mostly those are the reason if you put technical things on the side.
Thank you, Martin, for answering. Now let's move on to the last but not least presentation. So please let's welcome Krzysiek Kantecki, who will tell you more about why you should switch projects whenever you have a chance.
Hello guys, I'm really glad to see you at our first webinar, and my talk is named Time Travel. At the beginning, I must say that figuring out the title of my presentation was really hard challenge, and as you may see, it's not so sophisticated. So we prepared a contest for you, but details of that will be presented at the end of my talk, so keep focused. And back to the point, I'm Krzysiek Kantecki. I'm a front-end developer at Evogem, and in this talk, I would like to present you my story at Evogem, as well as point out what I have learned in particular projects. So let's go back in time, but not as far as 2012 when Pitbull released a song with that title, but we're gonna travel to August 2018, which is the time when I joined Evogem. And at this time, I had nearly 2 years of experience as a front-end developer. It was my third job, so you can assume that I wasn't a rookie. Well, no, I was a rookie. I was a rookie, especially in the context of project that I was about to face with, because I had experience only in Angular. And the project, which was called Virtual Control, as you may see on the title, was completely written in React, and it was on advanced level of development. So first thing that I learned in the new project was React, right? Well, it wasn't. I've learned that there is a great mentor in my project who helped me a lot in first weeks at Evogem, and his name is Robert. You can see him on my slide, and he's one of the most patient and helpful person that I know. Then, after a few weeks of being in the project, I finally learned React a bit, and it was especially helpful at that time because in Evo, all of our projects were written in React, and actually it's still the same. From that time, we didn't have an Angular or Vue project. Also, I've learned a lot of business logic because the app that we created was made to cover a quite complicated and non-digital process. Also, that was my first experience with AWS and Lambda, because that's how our backend application was architectured. And we also worked in real Scrum with project manager, with product owner, with sprints, demos, etc. And I didn't have the opportunity to try this before, so it was new for me as well. But this project was quite short for me because it ended up next month after I joined, because we finished the scope of MVP. But I didn't have much bench time because there was a need to develop an internal tool. For most of our projects, we use Jira, which is a tool for managing project and tracking issues. And we needed an app that will allow to log the time from multiple Jiras in one place, because at that time we created a new Jira for each client. And if you work across few projects like project managers, it's really hard to switch between Jiras. And that's how the app called Time Logger was invented. And I joined the team of 4 people, and we developed the tool from scratch. In the middle of December, after about 2 months of development, the app was production ready. And as you may know, I learned quite a lot from that project. I prepared my first demo. It was 2 weeks before we deployed and up to production, and it was presented to whole Evojam team, as far as I remember. I broadened my knowledge about React because as front-end developers, we naturally use plenty of NPM libraries like Formix, styled components, and many, many more. And obviously we did it there. As an authentication system, we use Google Sign-In, and as you may guess, it was my first time when I used that solution. At that time, for our projects, we used Gerrit, which is a team code collaboration tool. And the workflow of Gerrit is not that easy, and the proof can be found on our blog, because article about Gerrit workflow is one of our most popular one. And last but not least, from Time Logger, I've learned that at Evojam, developer can be in a different role, because the project itself was managed by my best friend, Marcin Radoń, who at that time was a front-end developer, but he decided to manage this project. Now he is doing mostly backend, as he mentioned. All right, let's go forward in time. And after finishing Time Logger at the end of 2018, we started the cooperation with Autogala, a car dealer company from Warsaw. And our task was to develop a mobile and back office application, which were both connected to backend application, also developed by us. It turned out to be one of the longest and biggest projects at Evojam, but even before the project was started, there were some novelties for me, because I participated in the workshop with the client, which was prepared to understand the business, to get to know about their needs and fears. Then we tried to prepare the scope of it and fill the backlog. And in the initial phase, I was responsible for setting up our front-end application and to choose some solutions, libraries for the future use. And obviously and clearly, I made some mistakes on that. But after the years, I can say that it was really beneficial for me, and I think that I took a lesson from that. Well, I haven't said that, but I worked in Autogala for quite a long time, because it was more than 2.5 years. So in 2020, I was still there, and the project has developed a lot. It was stable on production with plenty of clients, and front-end scope at that time was not that huge, because most of the logic was obviously developed on the backend side. And we had a great front-end team combined by Michał, with whom I also worked previously at Time Logger, Robert, who you have already seen before, and me. So I decided to try out myself on the other side, and my point of interest was backend. And it was mainly possible because of our great backend team, who gave me a lot of support. So my special thanks to Magda, my great friend who was my mentor during that situation. Thanks to Kuba and Valerie, who shared with me their broad knowledge and helped in a lot of difficulties that I had. And Łukasz, who joined our team at the end of my backend journey, but he was the person because of whom I wrote a few lines in Kotlin. So speaking about what I have learned during that time, during that nearly a year, let's point this out. I was in a great situation because our client accepted my willingness of learning backend and helping our team. And also stack of our backend services was really broad. So I started from making an API in Java with Spring, which used the data stored in Elasticsearch. I built an API for dashboard for our back office application and then implemented a frontend for that. After that, for several months, I was completing different backend tasks from different services that we had. And as I mentioned, we had a broad stack. So I have at least touched such technologies like Micronaut, RabbitMQ, Kotlin, and MongoDB. But everything comes to an end. So in the middle of 2021, it was clear that I will change the project. And it was a few months after I made the decision about finishing my backend journey. So I took a baggage of experience with myself and started another journey. But wait a minute. I'm about to tell you about my third project change, but you probably don't know when it actually happens or when is it possible. Well, the most obvious situation is when your project is finished because of some reason. In such cases, we as a company know that at least a few weeks before, so it's possible to organize a place in existing project, find a new one, or think about some tasks to do during your bench time. Another and more complicated case is when you are not satisfied with the project for some reason. We as a company are doing our best to avoid such situation, but it does happen from time to time. Even if the project was quite good at the beginning, it's just okay-ish after 2 or 3 years. And sometimes it's just about being tired after a long time. So obviously, first of all, you should try to overcome these obstacles with your teammates, with your one-on-one partner, or Artur, our head of delivery. But when everything fails, that's the time and good reason to change the project. Sometimes you might find a need to try something new. For example, when you are in a project for some time and it's not tiring you, but you just want to prove yourself that you can be a full stack developer. When there is no way to do it in your current project, you should probably tell somebody about that. It's possible that there is some need in another project that fits your requirements. And the last case, which is in my mind, is the situation when you fit really well to a project that we are about to start. For example, you're in a project for some time and you've got an Angular background because you did it for years in previous company. And the new project that will be started next month is written in Angular. Clearly, at the end of the day, it's your decision whether you like to change your technology and current project or not, but that's also possible. Okay, so I think that I pointed out a few situations and the reasons why developers are changing their projects in small software houses. So let's go back to my story. So as I mentioned, I finished my AutoGala journey because we started a new cooperation with client from totally different industry at June 2021. I will call this client KI, and our cooperation started with workshop, which was really exhausting, but not a new stuff for me. The new stuff was a solution overview, which I was to prepare after the workshop. It wasn't the easiest thing to prepare, to be honest, but Artur, our experienced head of development, gave me a hand and we did it together. The part of the solution overview itself and our future work was to figure out some idea how to combine a legacy system, which our client already had for more than 10 years, written in technology that we don't use and don't know, with the new features that we would like to develop with them. And last but not least, as you may expect from the product developed for more than a decade, the business logic is not a piece of cake. That was our challenge at the beginning, and we are still facing that, to be honest. But let's jump to the lessons that I learned from previous projects. While starting KI in October 2021, I can finally say I'm not a rookie. I've already learned my lesson from the previous project and I knew some things. First thing is that UI framework and design system makes a lot of difference in a long-term project. And if you wouldn't start that from beginning with telling the client why and that it's a really important thing, you probably never gonna implement it because there is always something more important to implement than refactoring whole system and detaching components to Storybook, for example. Another deduction from my previous work and research that I did before starting the project is that Redux is no longer needed. And for sure, it's not the only and the best tool for state management. I decided to use React Query because it handled a lot of cases that I had to do manually before, like caching the data, refetching for that, error handling, etc. And I know that it's not a Redux alternative, but with React Query, you'll probably be able to live without Redux. During previous years, I also get to know that there is something like IOTS, which helps decoding and encoding data to TypeScript types at runtime. I use that to prepare API tests because, as you probably remember, we had to combine our system with the legacy one. So we asked a developer of the legacy system to prepare some API for that. And we have tested it out by simple tests helped by IOTS to be sure that the data structure meets our conditions. And finally, cooperation with the client. The specificity of cooperation with Autogala required from us as developers a strong and direct cooperation with the client. So I found it really beneficial in our cooperation with KI. And because of that, I know that I can better feel and predict client expectations, which is extremely important, especially at the beginning of our project. And here we are in 2022. So I think that it's the time to make a summary. After a few projects at Evojam and a few in other companies, I can clearly say that every project has at least one great person that you can learn from. It doesn't really matter whether you're a junior or senior developer. The flow of knowledge is bidirectional. Also, it might look that every project is similar to the previous one, which I think it's not true, because in each project you have to get to know clients' expectations, understand business type, build relations, etc. Every project brings its own opportunities. You just have to be patient. Even in such long project as Autogala was for me, I was still able to refresh my existence, let me say like that, when I started learning backend. And project after project, I was able to draw some conclusions, which were super helpful for me during the future one. And I find it as one of the most important lessons that take place during project change. So that's it from my side, but it's not the end of my talk, because at the beginning I promised you a contest. So the contest task is, can you find a better name of my talk? Under the link presented here, you will find a form which will let you to send the answer, and I will choose the most interesting and fancy one. We'll send you this link after our webinar, so don't worry, you just don't have to retype it right now. And the winner of this contest will receive a package with some cool Evojam gadgets, like, for example, our hoodie with our logo, which is super comfortable, and many, many more. And I'm waiting for your ideas till 26th of July, as far as I remember. So now that's it from my side. I pretty much told you about my story at Evojam, which came through 4 projects in 4 years. And every of them was some lesson for me. I strongly encourage you to read our guidebook, where you can find more about changing projects. And you will also find plenty of more topics. Thank you very much again, and see you in the recruitment process to Evojam. But I can see that there are some Q&A questions. The first question is, what's the opportunity to grow in such a small company? How many time it takes to senior developer? Do you have architects? Well, starting from the end, we've got an architect, actually one architect, who is Kuba. How many time to senior? It depends. It depends on so many factors that there is no right answer for that, because you can join as a experienced mid developer and be senior just after a few months. And from the beginning, it also depends, because even junior developers or intern ones have different background, different way of learning, and yeah, it's not so easy to answer that, and there is no such statistic as far as I know. Krzysiek, how can you change project in Evo? I'm not sure what it exactly means, how you can change that. I presented few ways when it's possible, and yeah, it was on that slide, I guess. Whether to be expected any front-end recruitment in the nearest future? I think that's a good question for Anya or Claudia. So I think that they will answer that in the Q&A form, or just after I will switch off my presentations. So when there is no more questions for me, thank you once again, and I'm waiting for your contest ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to our speakers for sharing the stories with us. Also, thanks to all the attendees, and thank you for all the questions. I would like to answer this question about the front-end recruitment. So right now we are not. Maybe in a few months we will have such recruitment, but right now the recruitments that we have that are in progress are for Node.js developer and for senior UX UI designer. So feel free to check out our jobs page on our website, and maybe you will find something for yourself, and see you during the recruitment process. We also post our current recruitment processes that are open on our LinkedIn page and on Instagram. So we encourage you to follow us on social media to stay in touch with us. And once again, thank you so much for joining our webinar. We hope you enjoyed, and feel free to message us on social media. And moreover, after this webinar, you'll get a link to the guidebook where you can read even more tips on how to grow professionally as a developer, and some more insights on how we work at a small software company. There is also, I can see some more questions on the Q&A, so maybe I will read them out. One of the question is, what is the best way to learn React.js?
I'm sorry, I haven't noticed them. It was not on purpose. What's the best way to learn React.js? I think that the best way is from my experience, to find a buddy that will help you. But if you don't have one, I think that there are some Udemy courses that you can use to learn React. And I must say that it's really important to remember that you are learning to do something. So making your pet projects to your GitHub is the best way to learn. And you should do that from the very beginning. You just don't have to watch few courses and then do the project. It's better to watch some video and implement it to your GitHub already, just at the beginning. And the second question that I haven't noticed is how many projects and in which technologies do you have in your company? That's a tough question. How many projects? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8, I think it's 8, but I'm not sure. And which technologies? Well, in frontend, as I mentioned, we use mostly React, and on the backend side, we've got Java, we've got Kotlin, and also we've got one project in Scala.
Thank you, Krzysiek, for answering. I don't see any more questions, but if you have any questions after this presentation, after our webinar, feel free to message us on our social media, as I said before. And once again, huge thanks for joining us today, and hope to see you sometime in the future.